Chapter 2730. What a strong sword intent. Su Zimo nodded to himself. The mountain was tens of thousands of miles away, and the sword intent it emitted had left sword scars on the ancient stars on this side. One could imagine that the stars around the mountain peak would have been sliced into dust by that powerful sword intent. 3,000 realms. Could it be the sword realm? Su Zimo murmured in deep thought. When he recalled the aura of the Wu Dao he sensed in the spatial tunnel previously, he thought of a person and a look of joy flashed through his face. His eldest disciple, Kitsune. Kitsune cultivated the Wu Dao and her martial spirit was a sword. Bai Mingshue's talent in swordsmanship was unprecedented. Furthermore, her martial spirit was a sword. With the help of a sword-shaped martial spirit, her cultivation of the sword Dao improved tremendously and her combat strength was extremely strong. Yun Ting was a rare monster incarnate of the sword Dao. However, in Su Zimo's opinion, if Yun Ting and Kitsune were of the same cultivation realm, they would have to fight to determine who was better. If Kitsune ascended to the upper world, the most likely place for her to descend was the sword realm, not the heaven realm. If there was someone in the sword realm who cultivated the Wu Dao, the most likely person would be Kitsune. As Su Zimo's eldest disciple and the #1 successor of the Wu Dao, Kitsune was extremely valued by Su Zimo and his feelings for her were far beyond others. Although the forbidden Kun Peng and Carefree were his disciples as well, Su Zimo did not give them much guidance in terms of cultivation. The only exception was Kitsune, whom Su Zimo stayed by her side for 3 years to impart and guide carefully. In Tianhuang mainland, Kitsune did not disappoint and surpassed many experts. She attracted the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascended to the upper world. However, he did not know how far Kitsune had cultivated in the upper world. Su Zimo knew how cruel the cultivation environment of the upper world was and did not know what Kitsune had experienced after descending to the sword realm. Su Zimo pondered as he walked towards the tall mountain peak ahead. Before long, more than 10 sword lights appeared in front of him and sped towards him at a shocking speed, arriving before him in the blink of an eye. Su Zimo stopped in his tracks and sized up the crowd opposite him. There were 15 people in total. They either carried swords on their backs, with sharp swords by their waists or wielding swords in their hands. Their eyes and sword intent, all of them were sword cultivators. The 2 in the lead were a man and a woman. They were both at the true self realm while the rest were all heavenly immortals. The man was tall and slender with large palms. His eyebrows were like swords and his eyes were like stars. He had an extraordinary bearing and had already reached the celestial being stage of the true one stage. The woman was valiant and her long hair was tied up. She was tall and beautiful and was at the consolidation realm of the true self realm. When the man and woman stood together, they looked like an immortal couple, a match made in heaven that was pleasing to the eye. While Su Zimo sized up the other party, the sword cultivators opposite him were checking out Su Zimo as well. The green-robed cultivator looked a little strange. His cultivation realm was not low and was at the true self realm. However, his body was not in good condition, as though there was something wrong with it. His face was yellow and his aura was weak. Su Zimo's Qinglian true body still had a lot of power from the Master Slaying Curse and the Emperor's Tomb Curse. He was sent out of the Emperor's tomb by immortal Emperor Qinmu II suddenly and the 2 curses on his body were not purged completely. Therefore, he did not seem to be in a good condition. I am Jian Qin. The man in the lead cupped his fists towards Su Zimo and asked, "Fellow Taoist, where are you from and how should I address you?" Although it was the first time both parties met, these sword cultivators were rather polite and did not show any arrogance or disrespect. Su Zimo returned the greeting and cupped his fists as well. "I am from the heaven realm and my surname is Su." After all, everything was unknown and Su Zimo did not say his full name out of caution. The perfected immortal sword cultivator named Jian Qin smiled and seemed to have seen through Su Zimo's scruples. He did not mind and asked, "Fellow Taoist, what are you here for this time? Is the sword realm ahead?" Su Zimo asked. "That's right." The woman nodded. Su Zimo pondered and said, "It's nothing important. I just happened to pass by and wanted to pay a visit to the sword realm." He was currently at the true self realm, a perfected immortal. At this realm, the identity of a perfected immortal was considered an expert no matter which realm it was in. It was not strange for him to say such words. "You're here to pay a visit to the sword realm?" The woman had a strange expression as though she thought of something. The sword cultivators behind him revealed strange smiles as well. They sent spirit consciousness fluctuations to one another as though they were communicating secretly. Actually, Su Zimo's words caused the sword cultivators to misunderstand. They thought that by paying a visit, Su Zimo meant that he was here to spar with someone in the sword realm. Prior to this, there were also some paragons and monster incarnates from other realms who came to pay a visit and spar with the sword cultivators of the sword realm. However, all of them returned in defeat. In the sword realm, the strength of sword cultivators could be unleashed to its limits. If one did not cultivate the Tao of the sword and came to spar in the sword realm, they would definitely be suppressed. Jian Chen smiled gently. "Since you're a guest from the heaven realm, the sword realm naturally welcomes you." However, Jian Chen paused for a moment and looked at Su Zimo. "Fellow Taoist, your aura is weak and you don't seem to be in a good condition. It's fine." Su Zimo waved it off. "I'm just slightly injured. I'll be fine after some recuperation." The woman reminded him kindly, "Fellow Taoist Su, the sword chi in our sword realm is strong and sharp. You're not a sword cultivator and your body is unwell. If you enter the sword realm, I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it." Su Zimo was slightly surprised. Jian Chen looked at Su Zimo and nodded as well. "If you're not in a hurry, fellow Taoist Su, you can find a star outside and rest for a while. It won't be too late for you to enter the sword realm after you recover." Su Zimo knew his body's condition. As long as he waited for the hell water spring to cleanse Qinglian's true body, he would recover to his original state. He was concerned about Kitsune and wanted to enter the sword realm to investigate as soon as possible. At that thought, Su Zimo said, "Thank you for your reminder, fellow Taoists. I'm fine." When the dozen or so sword cultivators behind him heard that, they pursed their lips. "This person from the heaven realm is probably so stubborn because he thinks that we're neglecting him. That's good too. Let him suffer a little." A few heaven immortal sword cultivators communicated with their divine consciousness. Jian Chen and the woman looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. Jian Chen turned slightly and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, please." Su Zimo stepped forward and followed behind Jian Chen and the perfected immortal woman towards the tall mountain in front. "Fellow Taoist Su, how much do you know about our sword realm?" The woman glanced sideways and asked. "I don't know much." Su Zimo coughed softly. In fact, he knew nothing about the sword realm. He only knew its name. The woman smiled and said, "It's fine. I'll give you a brief introduction." End of chapter. Chapter 2731. Qian Kuan Academy, Place of True Inheritance. In a simple and elegant cave, there was a fragrance. A beautiful woman with her eyes closed was drawing on a piece of paper with a brush in her hand. On the woman's shoulder, there was a snow-white butterfly that was flapping its wings. It looked at the painting in front of the woman in disbelief. Painting Immortal Mo Qing. These days, she was immersed in this painting. For more than a month, she was so focused that she didn't open her eyes to look at it. Let's spread the news. Source: Changing app. It's really not bad, it's worth installing. It even supports Android and Apple phones. She didn't even rest as she was afraid of interrupting the painting process. There was only a figure on the paper. Before this, the painting was already half completed. Except for the blank face, the figure, the actions, and even the pair of eyes that were burning with purple flames were already drawn. As for Mo Qing, she was making use of the Fiend's statue Dao technique in the deity ghost immortal fiend diagram to attempt to deduce Desolate Martial's true appearance and complete the painting. After a long time, Mo Qing stopped and let out a sigh of relief. The painting was finally completed. But she still didn't open her eyes to look at it. Her heart was filled with anticipation and nervousness. It was also filled with complicated emotions. Over the past few days, she had been painting nonstop. It was a huge drain on her mind and energy. Mo Qing closed her eyes and stretched out her jade-like fingers. She gently massaged the space between her eyebrows to soothe her fatigue. Xiao Dai, why aren't you talking? Emo Qing asked. The snow-white butterfly on her shoulder looked at the face in the picture scroll in front of her and hesitated, but still didn't say anything. Emo Qing smiled and teased, could it be that you were frightened by Desolate Marshall's ferocious face and ferocious appearance as you guessed previously? No matter what, she still felt a sense of relief after completing this painting, as if she had put down a burden on her mind. You are indeed scared. Bing Dai muttered. But it's not because he's too scary. Oh? What? Emo Qing asked. Look at it yourself. Bing Dai said. Hearing Bing Dai's words, Emo Qing is even more curious. She took a deep breath and paused for a long time before she mustered the courage to open her eyes and look at the painting in front of her. Emo Qing was stunned. The person in the picture, she was too familiar with it. Junior brother Su from the academy. How could this be? On this portrait was a man dressed in a purple robe, standing with his hands behind his back. His eyes were burning with flames. Everything was in the posture of Araki Takashi. However, the face of this portrait belonged to Junior brother Su. Most importantly, Junior brother Su's face did not look out of place when matched with Desolate Marshall. It was almost a perfect fit, as though he was Desolate Marshall himself. Could it be that Su Zimo has a twin brother and the two of them look very similar? Bing Dai asked in a low voice. Emo Qing remained silent. She suddenly recalled the purple flames that appeared in Junior brother Su's eyes when he was playing chess with the chess deity Junyu in the room of the Divine Firmament Palace. She recalled the time when she, Junior brother Su, and Araki Takashi were in the Avicii Hell. She recalled Junior brother Su's strange attitude towards her. There was only one possibility. Emo Qing clenched her fists as anger rose in her heart. She stared angrily at the portrait in front of her. She reached out and tore the painting she had painstakingly made into pieces. Junior brother Su, how are you? Emo Qing was angry and embarrassed. She gritted her teeth. I trusted you and asked you to pass the portrait of Araki Takashi. I didn't expect you. However, Emo Qing changed her mind. After all, this was Junior brother Su's secret. Once it was exposed, Junior brother Su's life would be in danger and he wouldn't be able to stay in Qiankuan Academy. It was understandable that Junior brother Su didn't tell her such a secret. Emo Qing thought about it again. Even if you told me, would I leak it? Am I not worthy of your trust? The more she thinks about it, Emo Qing Xin is still somewhat angry. She burns the torn piece of paper. You burned it just like that? Bing Dai seemed to find it a pity. Emo Qing said, what's there to see? If you want to see it, you can see it every day. After that, Emo Qing tidied up and said, let's go and find him. Let's see how long he can keep up the act. Emo Qing left the cave and rushed toward the inner gate of the academy. She hadn't come out for more than a month. The atmosphere in the academy seemed to be a bit strange. Emo Qing frowned. Normally, there wouldn't be much change in the academy even if she was in seclusion for 10 or 100 years. But now, something seemed to have happened in the academy. Emo Qing didn't think much and continued to walk toward the inner gate of the academy. Not long after, she arrived in front of Su Zimo's cave. Su Zimo's cave had been reduced to ruins. The cave collapsed and the surrounding spiritual fields and medicinal gardens had long been destroyed. What happened? Emo Qing frowned. At this moment, not far away, an inner disciple of the academy passed by. He seemed to be afraid of something. Emo Qing moved and in the blink of an eye, she arrived in front of the inner disciple and blocked his path. Ah! The inner disciple was startled when he saw Emo Qing. Then he quickly bowed and said, Greetings, senior sister Emo Qing. Emo Qing pointed at the ruins not far away and asked, what's going on? The inner disciple looked at the ruins and then looked at Emo Qing. He couldn't help but recall the rumors about senior sister Emo Qing and that person. He asked with a strange expression, Senior sister Emo Qing, you don't know? What happened? Emo Qing asked. The inner disciple said, that's the cave of the traitor of the academy. Of course we have to clean it up to warn others. Nonsense. Emo Qing scolded and frowned. That's Junior brother Su's cave. Junior brother Su is the top of the heaven and earth lists. How much glory did he bring to the academy? He condensed the 10th step and was accepted as a registered disciple by the patriarch. How could he be a traitor of the academy? The inner disciple curled his lips and said disapprovingly, "No matter how great the glory is, it can't cover his betrayal of the academy and deceiving his teacher." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Mo Qing saw that the inner disciple kept on slandering Su Zimo. She was furious and unconsciously released the pressure of a genuine immortal to envelop the inner disciple. Her eyes were cold. The inner disciple trembled and found it difficult to breathe. His face was red and he was extremely uncomfortable. "Senior sister Mo Qing, please calm down." The inner disciple said with difficulty, "This matter has nothing to do with me. It's something that the patriarch said. It's something that everyone knows." "Senior sister Mo Qing, if you don't believe me, you can ask the patriarch." Hearing this, Mo Qing's heart was filled with uneasiness and her face turned pale. After a moment of silence, Mo Qing released the inner disciple and gritted her teeth. She said, "I'll go ask now. If you're lying, you'll be severely punished by the academy." Chapter 2732. Mo Qing left the inner sect of the academy and went straight to the patriarch's palace of heaven and earth. On the way, she thought about many things. At first, she did not believe it. But when she knew that junior brother Su was Araki Takashi from the demon region, she could not help but link the two things together. Could it be that Master found out that junior brother Su was Araki Takashi from the demon region, so he wanted to protect the righteous path and kill demons? Was that why junior brother Su was forced to betray Master? If not, junior brother Su did not have to break off relations with the academy, but did not enter the patriarch of the academy. Plans were flawless. Thus, he was knowledgeable about the patriarch and the academy. There was nothing he did not know. Was as dark as water. If he could deduce junior brother Su's identity as Araki Takashi from the demon region, saved his fellow disciples during the trial of the 10,000 junior brother Su now? He even killed a reincarnated perfected immortal in the trial for his fellow disciples. Would he be able to survive? Later, Mo Qing did not realize it herself. Even though she thought that Su Zimo had betrayed the academy and the others, she did not have any hostility towards Su Zimo. It was also the patriarch who protected him. Worried. He did not let the academy down and became the first on the heaven place of legacy. On the Dao in the clouds in front of junior brother, an ancient and mysterious palace, which was unprecedented and unprecedented. Mo Qing did not hesitate. Junior brother Su entered the academy and said loudly, "He has never done anything to harm the academy. Master, I don't understand why he would betray the academy." Came faintly from the palace. Yang Ruoxu asked very directly and did not hide anything at all. Descended and took a lot of courage to ask these questions in the palace of heaven and the academy. Mo Qing walked along the archbridge and entered the palace of heaven and earth. Of course, just as she stepped into the question in her heart. Missouri Qing, the patriarch of the academy, in the palace of heaven and earth, Su's identity as a patriarch of the academy, the demon's domain, sitting cross-legged in the center. There was also a man with a broken arm who faintly emitted a rotten sword. Immortal stretched out her only arm and pointed at his eyes were much dimmer. She said fiercely, "It was the moonlight sword immortal who had been severely injured by Araki Takashi from the demon region during the Nine Clouds Convention." Slightly and said, "Although the patriarch of the academy had used powerful means to save the patriarch sword immortal's life, his injuries had not healed. Was about to scold him again when the patriarch of the academy waved his hand slightly on his body that could not heal. Rotten flesh was constantly growing, which was why he sorry for this matter. Smell. Although the moonlight sword immortal had survived, to draw a tiger's she was like skin. A broken sword. One may know a person's face, was low, but not his and heart. She had lost all luster. I didn't expect this person to be so rebellious that he wanted to kill me. There was another man the crime of betraying his master. He stood upright, the patriarch and his gaze of the academy was not lying. His entire body exuded an awe-inspiring aura. It was the other true disciple. A trace of confusion flashed across junior brother's heart. At looking at the patriarch of the academy, he should not be aware of junior patriarch of the academy with her hands by her side from the demon's domain. Stood opposite the patriarch of the academy would not have hidden this matter. When the patriarch of the college saw Mo from the demon's domain, he nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Have a conflict with the patriarch of the academy. You must be here for This really did not make sense. Ruoxu came here for this matter for a while and asked again, "You came at the right time. Patriarch, if you have any questions, cultivation feel free to speak. Only that of a heaven immortal. I will answer them all at once." Even if he obtained some great opportunity and became a perfected immortal, I just heard some difference between him and the Patriarch is like heaven and earth. They said that he betrayed the Academy and betrayed his master. Why would Junior Brother Su want to kill the Patriarch? This is not slander. Is he courting death? Before Emochine could finish, the Moonlight Sword Immortal interrupted her and said, "This is absolutely true." Emochine looked at the Patriarch of the Academy. She was a little confused and wanted to ask for an answer. The Patriarch of the Academy did not say anything and only nodded slightly. Emochine's heart sank. Yang Ruoxu suddenly said, "Patriarch, forgive me for being rude." Without waiting for the Patriarch of the Academy to speak, the Yuehua Sword Immortal said coldly, "Yang Ruoxu, you have repeatedly questioned. Do you also want to betray the Academy and betray your master? Senior brother Yuehua, this is none of your business." Yang Ruoxu's eyes narrowed and he said, "You don't have to scare me or accuse me of these crimes." Although his cultivation realm was not as high as the Yuehua Sword Immortals, with his righteous spirit, he was completely fearless even in the face of the Yuehua Sword Immortal and the Patriarch of the Academy. Yang Ruoxu took a deep breath and stared at the Patriarch of the Academy again. A look of determination flashed in his eyes and he said, "I have heard some rumors about the Patriarch. It is said that Junior Brother Su's bloodline is that of a grade 12 creation Qinglian. And after he became a perfected immortal, his creation Qinglian body was completed." He added, "Source-changing divine artifact appet is really not bad. It is worth installing. It even supports Android and Apple phones. The Patriarch wants the grade 12 creation Qinglian bloodline, which is why he attacked Junior Brother. I have heard some rumors. It is said that Junior Brother Su's bloodline is that of a grade 12 creation Qinglian. And after he became a perfected immortal, his creation Qinglian body was completed. The Patriarch wants the grade 12 creation Qinglian bloodline, which is why he attacked Junior Brother." Chapter 2733. In the Academy, due to the supreme authority of the Academy Patriarch, no one dared to talk about it even if they had heard of it. Not to mention speaking about it in front of the Academy Patriarch. No one dared to question the Academy Patriarch. Except for Yang Ruoxu. There were many disciples in the Academy, and only Yang Ruoxu could cultivate the great righteousness scripture to greater success. After Yang Ruoxu finished speaking, the Palace of Cosmos suddenly fell into a dead silence. The atmosphere was so heavy that it was hard to breathe. There was even a hint of murderous intent in the air. Emochine looked at Yang Ruoxu with a worried expression. Based on what Yang Ruoxu had said just now, the Academy Patriarch could cripple him and expel him from the Academy. It was very likely. But in this way, the rumor was even more true. Yang Ruoxu stood straight and stared at the Academy Patriarch. His gaze was even a little rude. He wanted to find an answer from the Academy Patriarch's eyes and face. Unfortunately, the Academy Patriarch was silent. Hearing his question, Lin Fan's eyes didn't change at all. He could not see anything from the Academy Patriarch. "Are you doubting me?" The Academy Patriarch's gaze was calm as he asked slowly. "I wouldn't dare." Although Yang Ruoxu said that, his tone was not weak at all. He said in a low voice, "I just want to know the truth." "Is the truth important?" "Yes." At the mention of this, the two of them looked at each other with softly and said, down. "It's a pity for Junior Patriarch smiled slightly and waved his hand. The woman don't said regretfully, "Go and even find the answer yourself." Said that Junior Sister Biming took a deep look at the Academy Patriarch and said, "Of course I will." Not only that, Junior Brother Su is dead, I heard that the eight peak lords have all come forward to persuade her to give up on Wu Dao and start cultivating again. Expression changed. As long as she's willing to start cultivating again in her heart, her future is still shocked to hear that Junior Brother Su was dead. She can join any of the 8 sword peaks, Master, but she still Junior Brother Su is Wu Dao and refused to give up. Voice was trembling. That Wu Dao doesn't even have a sword immortal cultivation method. Junior I don't know what she's still holding on to. Him Junior Brother Su. The woman said, he's a traitorous beast who betrays his junior sister and destroys his ancestors. Bullshit. This bastard suffered the consequences of his own actions. Junior sister already devoured from the Emperor tomb. How capable can her master be? Emo Qing's body probably can't even compare to the current junior sister Baiming. After a long while, Emo Qing lowered her head and said something. Chapter 27:36. She turned around and left the palace of heaven and earth. They could see that there were many sword cultivators gathered by the sword cleansing pool, and most of them were tempering their divine swords. After Yang Ruoxu and Emo Qing left, woman was sitting cross-legged on a green rock beside the sword cleansing pool. Master, that Yang Ruoxu was rude sword across her knees and was cultivating with her eyes closed. At the very least, according to the sect rules, we can cripple him and expel him from the academy. Could still recognize at a glance that this woman was Kitsune, the patriarch of the academy. To the lower world, the current Kitsune was buried in the emperor's and had an additional cold no tales. Be it appearance. Does he want to find the truth? She was not inferior to the 4 fairies. Besides, as long as I control enough power in a spotless white robe, whatever I want with the flip of my hand, and he had an extraordinary aura to let him know that everything he has is given to him by me. Leaned over slightly, since I can give it to you, I can also take it back. However, the moonlight sword could not be heard clearly under the cover of the rumbling of the sword chi waterfall. The patriarch of the academy nodded slightly and praised Kitsune, and he nodded secretly with a look of approval in his eyes. Celestial realm, among all the people who had ascended to heaven wasteland domain in this life, sat in the main hall with a frown on cultivation speed. The news at this moment, Kitsune had already cultivated to the 9th level in the Emperor's tomb was still fermenting as long in the 9 clouds imparted the secret skills. Although they had spread the truth of the matter to the outside world, she would have a chance to step into the true martial realm and condense the true Wu Dao monarch gene, and the others true body involved in the matter so many opportunities and fortuitous encounters. Right now, she was only at the consolidation realm and was about to break through to the celestial being realm. Bai Mingshue's cultivation level was not much lower than his. From the looks of it, what Jian Qin and the rest said just now was not exaggerated at all. Kitsune must have been highly valued in the sword world. Countless cultivation resources were piled up, and she could only reach this stage with her talent and fortuitous encounters at home. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness swept across the man beside Kitsune. True First Realm, Dongshu Realm. The Truth Realm was divided into Unity, Empyrean, Kongming, and Dongshu. This man had already cultivated to the peak of the True One Realm, the same level as the Moonlight Sword Immortal, Chess Immortal Yunzhu, and the others. The man seemed to have sensed something as he turned to look in Su Zimo's direction. Sword light flickered in his eyes. This is an expert. Su Zimo thought to himself. The sharpness on this person's body was restrained. It was clear that he had cultivated the way of the sword to a simple and unadorned state. Sword light flickered in his eyes with a hidden sharpness, ready to erupt with a powerful attack at any moment. Su Zimo had just stepped into the True One realm and had yet to fight with a true immortal. However, Wu Dao's original body had fought many true immortal powerhouses before. He was not unfamiliar with the depths of true immortal powerhouses. A look of respect and admiration flashed across Jian Chen's face as he said, "This is our eldest senior brother, Wang Dong. He's also the first sword whiz of the Sword Slayer Peak." "Greetings, senior brother." Jian Chen and the others went up to greet him and bowed, greeting him in unison. Wang Dong nodded slightly and held his hands in the air. He said with a smile, "So it's junior brother Jian Chen and junior sister Chu Xian. There's no need to be so polite." Kitsune was still sitting on the green stone and cultivating with her eyes closed. She seemed to have turned a deaf ear to everything in the outside world and had no intention of getting up. "This is?" Wang Dong's gaze landed on Su Zimo as he asked. Jian Chen hurriedly said, "This is fellow Taoist Su from the Heaven Realm. He came to visit the sword world, so I brought him around." Upon hearing the words fellow Taoist Su, Kitsune's heart skipped a beat. However, she thought about it again. How is that possible? There are too many cultivators with the surname Su in the world. How can there be such a coincidence? I must be possessed. Sigh, there has been no news of Master all these years. I wonder where Master is after ascending to the upper world. How is he now? Although Kitsune's eyes were still closed, she was disturbed by the words fellow Taoist Su, and could not continue cultivating. Welcome, fellow Taoist from the heaven realm. Wang Dong smiled and said, most sword cultivators in the sword world are battle-hungry. If fellow Taoist Su wants to spar with us, you're always welcome. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. Chu Xian looked at Wang Dong with a hint of admiration in her eyes and asked gently, Senior Brother Wang, what are you doing here? Wang Dong shook his head slightly and looked at Kitsune beside him with a helpless expression. I'm here to look for junior sister Baiming because I want to persuade her to give up on Wu Dao. As long as she's willing to give up on Wu Dao, her future achievements will be limitless even if she has to cultivate from scratch. Jianchen asked tentatively, it seems like Senior Brother Wang still failed? Wang Dong sighed and smiled bitterly. Junior sister Baiming is still too stubborn. I can't persuade her no matter how hard I try. I really don't understand why she's so stubborn about Wu Dao. That's right. Jianchen said, Wu Dao is incomplete. Junior sister Baiming can't see any hope even if she continues cultivating. What's the point? Wang Dong said, actually, even if Wu Dao has a complete technique, I don't recommend her to cultivate Wu Dao. Compared to cultivation techniques like the immortal, Buddhist, and demon Dao that have been passed down since ancient times, Wu Dao is just a Dao technique created by a cultivator from the lower worlds. Her future achievements are limited, and she's definitely unable to go against Dao techniques like the immortal, Buddhist, and demon Dao. Kitsune suddenly said, but in the sword world, no matter which heavenly immortal realm sword cultivator cultivates, they can't defeat the sword in my hand. When this was mentioned, Wang Dong, Jian Chen, and the others were slightly stunned and speechless. After a moment of silence, Wang Dong said, even so, your cultivation can only stop at the heavenly immortal realm. What future do you have? If you cultivate Wu Dao, you'll never be able to condense a Dao fruit, and you'll never be able to defeat a perfected immortal who has condensed a Dao fruit. There's no doubt about that. That might not be the case. Right at this moment, Su Zimo, who had been silent since the beginning, suddenly spoke. When they heard this, Wang Dong, Jian Chen, and the others frowned. Kitsune's body trembled, and she suddenly opened her eyes, and her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. If even Su Zimo gave up on Wu Dao, there was naturally no need for Kitsune to persist. However, Su Zimo's expression was calm after hearing Wang Dong's explanation without any shock, realization, or enlightenment. Su Zimo was about to speak when Kitsune at the side was already impatient. She had just reunited with Su Zimo and had countless things to say. She only wanted to find a place where no one would disturb her to chat with Su Zimo. Who would have thought that this group of sword cultivators would be so blind as to talk non-stop beside her, buzzing around her ears and annoying like flies? Kitsune took a step forward and came to Su Zimo's side. Master, let's go. This group of sword cultivators from the upper world are ignorant and don't know anything. Wang Dong, Jian Chen, and Chu Xian. As Kitsune spoke, she dragged Su Zimo out of the sword cleansing pool and towards her cave abode. The two of them disappeared quickly, leaving behind a group of sword cultivators standing in the wind, stunned on the spot and unable to recover for a moment. Senior Brother Jianchen, bad news. A sword cultivator said while panting. Senior Sister Baiming went to the sword cleansing pool to cultivate again. What? Jianchen was shocked and said hurriedly, Junior Sister Baiming was severely injured 3 days ago and she went to the sword cleansing pool again? Does she want to die? At the mention of this, a strange expression appeared on the sword cultivator's face as he stammered and stopped talking. Jian Chen sped in the direction of the sword cleansing pool and scolded, If you have something to say, just say it. Why are you stammering? The sword cultivator coughed gently and said, Senior Sister Baiming's injuries from 3 days ago have completely healed. What? Jian Chen staggered and widened his eyes in disbelief. She recovered from such severe injuries in 3 days? How is that possible? The sword cultivator smiled bitterly. I'm not sure either. The other perfected immortal senior brothers also found it unbelievable. Jianchen was confused. With such severe injuries, even if all the elixirs in the sword realm were used on Kitsune, they would not be able to heal Kitsune in 3 days, right? Kitsune's body and bloodline were indeed powerful, but not to this extent. What the hell? A figure in green suddenly flashed across Jianchen's mind. Could it be related to him? Jianchen shook his head and thought to himself, he's a perfected immortal. Even if he's good at medicine, it's impossible for him to heal junior sister Baiming in 3 days. In fact, Kitsune's injuries were indeed healed by Su Zimo. After his creation Qinglian true body entered the 12th grade, a large amount of vitality was nurtured in her bloodline. In the Yin-Yang talisman scripture, Su Zimo had comprehended a secret healing technique, the lotus finger, which could be used with his Qinglian bloodline. In the Tao of Yin and Yang, Yin was in charge of killing and Yang was in charge of life. This lotus finger could use a secret technique to seal the massive vitality nurtured in Qinglian's bloodline into Kitsune's body. To a certain extent, Kitsune was nourished by the 12th grade creation Qinglian bloodline and her injuries healed extremely quickly. In 3 days, she was completely healed. Su Zimo naturally had a backup plan for letting Kitsune cultivate in such a way. This time, Su Zimo did not follow Kitsune to the sword cleansing pool. Instead, he stayed in Kitsune's cave abode to purge the remaining power of the 2 curses in his body. Beside the sword cleansing pool, Jianchen and the others finally arrived and tried to persuade Kitsune, but the latter turned a deaf ear. It was only when she was covered in injuries and barely breathing that Kitsune staggered out of the sword cleansing pool and forced herself to return to her cave abode before fainting. Su Zimo helped her up and used the lotus finger to heal her injuries and cleanse her bloodline once more. Her body would be destroyed, repaired, destroyed again, and repaired again. This repeated cycle, together with the secret technique of the martial scripture, would allow Baiming Xue's body and bloodline to grow and transform at the fastest speed. 3 days later, Kitsune recovered and entered the sword cleansing pool to cultivate once more. The cycle repeated. Every 3 days, Kitsune would cultivate in the sword cleansing pool for a longer period of time. In just a month, the berserk sword chi in the sword cleansing pool could no longer harm Kitsune's body. She cultivated in the sword cleansing pool for an entire day and was completely unharmed. Kitsune's cultivation realm did not improve at all and there was no change in her appearance either. However, in reality, her body and bloodline were undergoing a massive transformation. Even if others knew about this cultivation method, they would not be able to imitate it. Firstly, it had an extremely high requirement on the cultivator's willpower. Secondly, it required a cultivator with the grade 12 creation Qinglian bloodline to help the other party without hesitation at the cost of expending a large amount of their own essence blood. Of course, the sword cultivators did not think much of it. Junior sister Baiming was pure and beautiful like a fairy. She was a peerless beauty. Why did she have to suffer such cruel torture? That Wu Dao had cultivated for so long and yet, he had not made any progress in his cultivation realm at all. As time passed by, not only did this cause a stir in Sword Culling Peak, it even alarmed the sword cultivators of the other 7 sword peaks. Chapter 2742. You want to spar with me? Su Zimo looked at the naive sword cultivator called Nye Chen and wondered if he had chosen the wrong person. But on second thought, the distance between the heaven realm and the sword realm was too far. The people in the sword realm did not know who he was, let alone what skills he had. It was understandable that this person came to spar with him. However, for the current Su Zimo, after stepping into the true first stage, the 12th stage Qinglian's real body had grown to the peak state. Even if he did not use his bloodline or any magic, he could crush all the true immortals in the true first stage with just Qinglian's real body. Kitsune was still in the cave abode, waiting for him to go back and heal her injuries. Moreover, a large amount of energy from the Emperor's tomb had accumulated in his body. After removing the two curses, he was ready to refine and absorb the energy to break through to the heaven realm. He did not expect Nye Chen to come at this time. Seeing that Su Zimo was silent, Jianchen thought that he had some concerns, so he stepped forward and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, you have been in the sword realm for a while. My junior brothers heard that you came from the heaven realm, so they all want to see your skills. Don't worry, fellow Taoist Su. Junior brother Nye Chen will know what to do." "Okay." Su Zimo nodded. He just wanted to end it quickly and return to the cave abode to help Kitsune heal her injuries while he continued to cultivate. As for this Nye Chen, to him, it was not a challenge at all. Moreover, he had a good impression of the sword realm, so he could not refuse the other party's visit. Moreover, the sword realm had always treated him with respect. Even if they came to challenge him, they only found a sword cultivator in the true first stage. Seeing that Su Zimo agreed, Jianchen was stunned for a moment and felt a little surprised. The commotion here attracted more than half of the sword cultivators in the sword-slaying peak. They gathered in a circle, 3 inside and 3 outside. More and more people gathered, and all of them looked excited. Play a perfect copy of the old version of the divine artifact that could change the source of the old version. Changing source artifact. Nye Chen stepped forward and said calmly, "Fellow Taoist Su, after all, you are a guest from afar. You can make the first move. I will give you 3 moves." Hearing this, there was a burst of applause from the crowd. In the eyes of many sword cultivators, Nye Chen had given up the initiative and allowed Su Zimo to make the first move. He had already given Su Zimo enough respect. "You want me to go first?" Su Zimo had a strange look on his face. Nye Chen nodded lightly and said, "Feel free to make your move. I absolutely won't retaliate within 3 moves. But after 3 moves, you have to be careful." Su Zimo smiled and nodded. Jianchen took a deep breath and said loudly, "Get ready. Begin." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zimo's figure flashed, and he instantly arrived before Nye Chen at a shocking speed. Nye Chen was shocked. So fast? As Nye Chen had just said that he would give the other party 3 moves out of courtesy, it was not appropriate for him to retaliate. He could only subconsciously withdraw. Su Zimo stretched out his hand and grabbed the sword in his arms. Before Nye Chen could react, Su Zimo's hand had already grabbed the sword hilt. A dazzling sword light flashed, accompanied by a clear and melodious sword cry. The onlooking sword cultivators only felt a flash of light before their eyes, and then it disappeared in an instant. The next moment, Su Zimo had already returned to his original position, as though he had never moved. The two of them had just clashed. The exchange was too fast and not many sword cultivators saw clearly what happened in the middle. Su Zimo had a calm expression. He had already retreated to his original position. The two of them were still 100 feet apart. Nye Chen hugged the sword in his arms as though nothing had happened. However, there was another wound in his glabella. If that sword had penetrated any deeper, he would have died on the spot. "I've lost." After a long silence, Nye Chen said slowly. Thereafter, he cupped his fists toward Su Zimo and turned to leave silently. A series of sighs came from the surrounding crowd. A look of pity flashed through Jianchen's eyes. To think that even Nye Chen of Sword Slaughter Peak, who was at the consolidation stage, could not defeat this person. Furthermore, the methods that this person displayed earlier were indeed terrifying. Not only was his movement technique extremely fast, his body was also strong. He could defeat Nye Chen, who was wielding a sword with his bare hands. Jian Chen knew that even if he were to go against Su Zimo, he might not be able to win for sure. Chapter 2743. In the conference hall. Wang Dong had prepared fine wine and was waiting for Nie Chen's triumphant return. In his opinion, there shouldn't be any accidents in this battle. When Nie Chen condensed his Tao fruit and stepped into the true self realm, he had attracted 79 heavenly tribulations, which was rare in the sword world. Furthermore, Nie Chen's combat strength was ranked in the top 5 among the consolidation stage sword cultivators of Sword Slayer Peak. As expected, not long after, Nie Chen's figure appeared at the entrance of the conference hall. Wang Dong smiled and went up to him, praising, "It hasn't even been half an hour. Junior brother Nie, you're indeed fast." When Nie Chen heard that, the corners of his mouth twitched uncontrollably. Wang Dong could not help but frown when he saw that Nie Chen's expression was not right and he was a little depressed. He took a closer look and realized that there were 2 fine sword wounds between Nie Chen's brows. Although the wounds had already healed, there were still traces of them. "Junior brother Nie, you've lost?" Wang Dong probed. Nie Chen sighed. "This cultivator from the heaven realm is indeed skilled. I can't defeat him." Wang Dong consoled, "It's fine. Junior brother Nie, don't be discouraged. Who hasn't been defeated since we started cultivating?" Nie Chen laughed bitterly. Actually, a loss was a loss. However, he was truly defeated too thoroughly. The other party did not even use a weapon and he could not even last a single round. This was a huge blow to him. Seeing that Nie Chen was depressed, Wang Dong encouraged him, "Junior brother Nie, don't be discouraged. The sword Tao of the sword cultivators of Sword Slayer Peak is meant to kill. He's a guest from afar. You restrained yourself and couldn't unleash the true power of the sword Tao of massacre. It's reasonable for you to lose. If it was a life and death battle, it's still unknown who would win." Nie Chen opened his mouth slightly and hesitated. It was not that he did not unleash his full potential, but that Su Zimo did not give him the chance at all. If it was a life and death battle earlier, he would have died countless times. The 2 of them had not chatted for long when a sword cultivator suddenly rushed over from outside and said while panting, "Senior brother Wang, after senior brother Nie was defeated, Chu Xian and the other senior brothers and sisters couldn't stand it and stood out to challenge that person." "Nonsense!" Wang Tong scolded. "Since you want to spar with him, of course it should be under a fair environment. Junior brother Nie has already sparred with him today. If you want to spar again, you have to wait for a day and give him some time to rest. If we were to defeat him in a battle of attrition, it would be an unfair victory. Wouldn't it be a laughingstock? If this were to spread, people would say that our sword world is bullying outsiders." That sword cultivator looked embarrassed and muttered softly, "It's not certain who's bullying who. What are you mumbling about?" Wang Dong frowned and said, "Go back quickly and stop junior sister Chu Xian and the others. The other party is junior sister Baiming's master in name. We can't do things like taking turns to fight them." The sword cultivator looked embarrassed. "Senior brother Wang, you're too late. By the time I rushed over, it was already over." "Is it over?" Wang Dong asked helplessly. "You didn't hurt fellow Taoist Su, did you?" The corner of Nie Chen's mouth twitched again. But the sword cultivator could not help but roll his eyes. "Senior brother Wang, you might not know the capabilities of this Su fella. Senior sister Chu Xian and more than 10 other sword cultivators went up against him, but they were all defeated without even lasting a single round." Wang Dong raised his brows. "I'll hold the line for junior brothers Bu Yao and Wen Zheng." "Yes." Before Wang Dong and the others walked out of the meeting hall, another sword cultivator rushed over from afar. Wang Dong's heart sank when he saw the flustered look on this person's face. "Senior brother Wang, bad news." The sword cultivator saw Wang Dong and said loudly, "Senior brothers Bu Yao and Wen Zheng were knocked unconscious by that person's 2 palms. They couldn't even pull out their swords." This news was like a shocking thunder that struck Wang Dong and made him a little dizzy. Bu Yao and Wen Zheng were defeated too quickly, weren't they? As sword cultivators, they could not even pull out their swords. If this news spread, they would probably become the biggest joke of the 8 great sword peaks. Kitsune displayed the two major sword skills in front of Su Zimo. Su Zimo nodded slightly when he sensed the sword intent and killing intent contained within. Kitsune's talent in the sword Dao was indeed shocking. All these years, even without his guidance, she had already cultivated the two major sword skills to greater mastery. It was also because Kitsune possessed the two major sword skills that she came to the sword-slaying peak after ascending to the sword world. In the sword-slaying peak, she even had the chance to cultivate the human-slaying sword art. However, she was still unable to fuse the three major sword skills into one and comprehend the supreme divine power, immortal slaying sword. Due to the death of the immortal slaying Emperor Lord, the ancient scrolls that recorded the three major sword skills were lost. Although the three major sword skills were passed down, the sword intent of the immortal slaying Emperor Lord could not be passed down. The sword intent was sealed in the three ancient scrolls, which were the three major sword skills in Su Zimo's hands. Only by witnessing and sensing the sword intent in the ancient scrolls could one fuse the three major sword skills. Su Zimo took out the ancient scrolls of the three major sword skills and handed them to Kitsune. From today onwards, not only do you have to temper your body and bloodline under the waterfall of the sword cleansing pool, you have to continue cultivating the three major sword skills and comprehend the sword intent within. Kitsune's eyes lit up when she saw the three ancient scrolls. As a sword cultivator of the sword world, she naturally knew how precious the three ancient scrolls were and what they meant to her. "Thank you, Master." Kitsune received the three major sword skills solemnly and began cultivating in the cave abode. Even though he was the one imparting his Dao to Bai Ming Shui, in reality, he was also comprehending the three great sword arts through Bai Ming Shui's massacre sword Dao. Right now, he had already fused the three major sword skills and could conjure the embryonic form of the immortal slaying sword. However, he had yet to comprehend the supreme divine power. In the past few days at Sword Crafting Peak, Su Zimo had been absorbing the killing intent emitted by Sword Crafting Peak while comprehending the three major sword skills. He had gained quite a lot. There was a high chance that he could fuse the three major sword skills completely in Sword Crafting Peak and comprehend the immortal slaying sword. A few days later, in the conference hall of Sword Crafting Peak. Apart from Wang Dong, Gong Sun Yu, Sword Immortal Tai Lai, Xin Yu, Qin Zhong, and Monk Zhu Jian, there were two more Peak Paradise Void Realm perfected immortals. One of them was dressed in black robes and had a cold aura. His cheeks were thin and his eyes were sunken. His name was Li Shui, and he was from Demon Sword Peak. The other one had a cold and expressionless face. Chapter 2748. After seeing Su Zimo, Yun Ting's expression changed continuously. First, he was shocked and in disbelief. Then, he was pleasantly surprised and almost shouted out loud. However, he quickly calmed down after thinking about it. Su Zimo had the creation Qinglian bloodline, and this would lead to a fatal disaster in the heaven realm. At this time, the outside world thought that Su Zimo had died. If he exposed Su Zimo's identity, who knew what kind of unforeseen events would happen? In his heart, he certainly did not want to lose a powerful opponent like Su Zimo. It was precisely because of Su Zimo's existence that he was able to incite him to advance courageously in his sword Dao. Moreover, in his sister's heart, she definitely did not want anything to happen to Su Zimo. At this moment, Yun Ting heard Qin Zhong loudly ask Su Zimo if he dared to fight with him. Su Zimo smiled slightly and looked at Yun Ting, who was not far away. He nodded slightly and said, "Actually, I'm friends with this fellow Taoist Yun Ting." "Oh." Before Su Zimo could finish, Yun Ting hurriedly shouted and interrupted him. Yun Ting could tell that Su Zimo wanted to say that he had fought with him before. When this sentence was said, others would definitely be curious about the outcome of the battle between the two of them. The fact that he had been defeated twice in a row would definitely not be able to be hidden. After Yun Ting came to the sword world, he had displayed his talent in the sword Dao incisively and vividly, and had received the attention of countless seniors in the sword world. It could be said that he was the moon surrounded by stars. If Su Zimo were to announce the fact that he had defeated him twice in public, he would not be able to afford the humiliation. Yun Ting's shout not only confused Su Zimo, but also the others. Yun Ting trotted all the way to Su Zimo and said loudly, "It's really like the flood rushing to the Dragon King's temple. The two of us are too close." Su Zimo originally wanted to say that they had fought, but when Yun Ting said it, it became a different meaning. Yun Ting looked at Wang Tong, Sword Immortal Tai Lai, and the others. He put his arm around Su Zimo's shoulder and said with a smile, "This is my brother-in-law." Wang Tong, Sword Immortal Tai Lai, and the others were dumbfounded. The surrounding sword cultivators who were waiting to witness a great battle were also stunned on the spot, dumbfounded. Kitsune frowned slightly and suddenly turned her head. She glanced at Su Zimo and then stared at Yun Ting, a trace of inexplicable hostility flashing in her eyes. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He didn't know what Yun Ting was up to. He was about to speak when Yun Ting winked at him. "Brother Su, I've heard about you from my sister." Yun Ting said through his consciousness, "You have the creation Qinglian bloodline. It's best if you don't expose your identity." Of course, Su Zimo was aware of this. He had never intended to reveal his identity. However, he didn't understand why Yun Ting would come over and claim that he was his brother-in-law if he hid his identity. "Is this fellow cultivator Su your brother-in-law?" Sword Immortal Tai Lai still couldn't believe it. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? Yun Ting said, "Of course. His name is Su Zhu. He and my sister are in love and we have a good relationship." Hearing the two words Su Zhu, Su Zimo's mouth twitched. This name was a little too casual. It was obviously a combination of his surname and Yun Zhu's name. Su Zimo didn't say anything. He didn't mention his name to anyone in the sword world anyway. Su Zhu was just a name. As for what he said about them being in love, it was just a casual remark by Yun Ting. He didn't pay much attention to it. However, Kitsune narrowed her eyes and looked at Yun Ting with a scary gaze. Wang Tong, Sword Immortal Tai Lai, and the others looked at each other awkwardly. "Where are you going, junior sister Dark North?" Yun Ting asked instinctively. Kitsune looked indifferent. She didn't even look at Yun Ting and left the cave abode. Yun Ting looked back at Su Zimo and asked, "Is junior sister Dark North angry?" "I didn't say anything." Su Zimo smiled. "She's always been like this. She might not be against you." "Then what is she going to do?" Yun Ting asked again. Su Zimo thought for a moment and said, "She's probably going to cultivate." In fact, he could vaguely guess what Kitsune was thinking. Kitsune probably wanted to cultivate faster and enter the true martial realm as soon as possible. Then she could condense the true Wudao body and fight Yun Ting. For some reason, Su Zimo vaguely felt that Kitsune seemed to be very hostile to Yun Ting. It was probably their first meeting. Although Yun Ting talked a lot, he shouldn't have offended Kitsune in any way. Maybe it's just my imagination. Su Zimo shook his head. Right then, Yun Ting suddenly approached and rubbed his palms with a bashful expression. He stammered, "Brother Su, does your eldest disciple have a Dao partner?" Su Zimo looked at the bashful Yun Ting and smiled faintly. He had clearly seen through Yun Ting's thoughts. Yun Ting sensed Su Zimo's gaze and knew that he couldn't hide it anymore. He said, "Brother Su, I've known about you and my sister for a long time. Don't worry, I'll definitely support the two of you. I've been obsessed with the Tao of the sword all these years and have never had a Tao partner. Your eldest disciple is single as well. Why don't you help set them up?" At this point, Yun Ting seemed to have thought of something and added hurriedly, "But there's one thing. After we become Tao partners, we'll have to be single. My seniority can't be any lower." "What are you thinking about? There's nothing going on between me and Yunju." Su Zimo was a little helpless. "As for what you're talking about, it'll be up to Baiming herself. I won't interfere with her." "What's wrong with that?" Yun Ting replied, "You're her master. Arranging a marriage for her is as easy as saying the word." When Su Zimo heard that, he replied sternly, "No matter who it is, be it her master or her parents, nobody can decide her fate and life. Baiming is not a 3-year-old child. She has her own choices." In the minds of most people like Yun Ting, it was still the order of the parents and the words of the matchmaker. However, Su Zimo's upbringing was different from others. He did not want to impose his will on others. When Yun Ting saw how serious Su Zimo was, he changed his tone and asked, "In that case, you won't stop me from being with her?" Su Zimo nodded. Yun Ting beamed. "That's simple. If junior sister Baiming enters the true self realm, you can come and spar with me." Suddenly, Yun Ting changed his mind and agreed. In his opinion, when the two of them fought, he could subdue Kitsune with his unparalleled sword Dao and display his unparalleled splendor. Were they quarreling now? After a pause, Yun Ting said, "Also, senior brothers, please restrain the sword cultivators of the various sword peaks. Don't think about challenging him in the same realm, lest you embarrass yourselves. Sword cultivators of the same realm may not win even if they form a sword formation, let alone one-on-one. On the sword slaughtering peak, there was another world. This was the center of the sword slaughtering continent, and also the place where the sword chi of massacre was the strongest. Without a grotto heaven realm cultivation, it was impossible to gain a foothold on the peak. At this moment, there were 8 cultivators gathered at the peak of the mountain. They were either sitting or standing, and they were sipping tea as they chatted idly with relaxed expressions. Among the 8, there were 7 men and 1 woman. They were the peak masters of the 8 sword peaks. The peak master of the ultimate sword peak was also the only woman among the 8. She looked at the figure at the foot of the sword slaughtering peak, who was going against the flow and rushing against the waterfall of sword chi. She sighed softly. Kitsune has suffered a lot these days. Amit Ba. The peak master of the Zen sword peak chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly and said, "However, her physical body and bloodline are clearly transforming. Although she still can't condense a Dao fruit, her combat strength is stronger than before. It shouldn't be a bad thing for Kitsune." The peak master of the sword slaughtering peak snorted coldly and said, "If not, I would have expelled her master from the sword world long ago. I don't care even if I'm criticized." "You're still so hot-tempered." The others laughed. The peak master of the extreme sword peak said, "Speaking of which, her master is also from the heaven realm like Yun Ting. I didn't expect her to have such a relationship with Yun Ting." The peak master of the illusory sword peak frowned and said, "I heard that Yun Ting's sister is one of the 4 fairies of the heaven realm. I didn't hear that he has a Dao companion." "I'm not sure about that." The others shook their heads slightly. Heaven realm. The peak master of the demon sword peak pondered and said, "I heard that Qinglian was born in the heaven realm. She condensed into a human body and has already cultivated to grade 12. "I heard about that too." The peak master of the 5 elements sword peak said with a regretful expression, "It's a pity that the cultivator with Qinglian's body was forced into the emperor's tomb and has already died. A grade 12 creation Qinglian is so precious. Even the immortal slayer Emperor Lord back then did not manage to nurture her." Heis. The peak master of the overlord sword peak said, "It's a pity that a paragon died. We can only blame the heavens for toying with us. If he was born in the sword world, he wouldn't have ended up like this." "That's right.